Hey everyone, I just wanted to give you a heads up that my audio in this interview with Mike Chen is broken somehow. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound great. That is technology not being on my side. Mike sounds great. I really hope that you are still able to listen to and enjoy this interview despite things not sounding so great on my end. Apologies. And we'll be back with more episodes in the weeks to come. This episode of Now This Is Lit is brought to you by Audible. Check the link in the description to get your first Star Wars audiobook free. Everyone loves free things. Click that link. Do it. This show is also brought to you by our patrons. If you want to support the show in a different way, with just $1 a month, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/StarWarsLitPod. You can get a sticker. You can get access to an exclusive show that we do every month that's wild and chaotic and fun and something you can only get by becoming a member of the Patreon. There'll be so many more perks very, very soon. But for now, do you want a sticker? Do you want a sticker that has a Now This Is Lit logo? Because it's fantastic and I love them. But I also want to give them away because there's just a stack of stickers on my desk. So if you want one, $1 a month. Patreon.com/StarWarsLitPod. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. You're listening to Now This Is Lit, a podcast about Star Wars books, the people who make them, and the readers who just can't get enough of them. I'm your host, Meg Dowell. I use she, her pronouns. And it is so good to be back. And I'm so glad that for one of my first episodes back, I got to talk to Mike Chen about a Star Wars book that I really, really loved. And that's, of course, Outlaws Low Red Moon, which came out at the beginning of February. Interview is a little bit later than I would have liked, but sometimes life happens. But life also goes on. And this is a great conversation. I do not regret having it. And I hope you do not regret listening to it.
I'm so glad to have you back. It feels like we just talked. And that
we did just talk.
Did we like when? I don't even know. Like my concept
I think it was
of like.
I think it was November or so.
Okay, so it has not been that long.
Yeah.
Okay. I have like no concept of like how long has it been since this thing happened.
Yeah. Everything is fucked right now, so it's okay.
Yes, 100%. But I am so glad that we are able to do this and sit down or stand, depending on your preference, and talk about Star Wars books. I promise I remember how to do this. It may have been a while, but I still got it. I still got it. Somewhere deep down in there, it is there. No, but really, I've been looking forward to having this conversation ever since I read the book, and I think I read it like the very beginning of January. Because it was like it was my book that I was like, okay, when I get back from break and I don't want to do like my actual work, which I still have to do anyway, my treat can be to read Little Red Moon. So I did. And ever since, like, I promise, it was probably like 2 pages, 3 pages, and I was like, I'm sold. We're good. This is only going to get better from here, isn't it? And it did. And that's good for you, and it's also good for me. So, been looking forward to this for, yes.
Did you play Outlaws before that?
I did. I did, and it had been a while. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to refresh kind of like my memory on like the key points of like things that happened, because I'm like, I really don't remember. But also, I'd gotten pretty far into the game, but I hadn't actually finished it. So I was like, well, what if I just finished really quick? So that I just like knew that like, because you don't need to have played the game to enjoy the book, but like I still wanted the context, especially for the epilogue. No spoilers, but I was kind of like, I would like to like kind of remember where we are at in time.
I would say like of the different like media people that I've talked to, about half of them have played the game and half of them did not. And it was really interesting seeing like they both enjoyed it, but their context for it was completely different. And so it was like first I was just like, okay, this works for both sides. So that's really good. But it was really interesting to see like what they took away from it and like where they thought the characters would go from there if they had not played it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really interesting way to like approach it because it can go either way. And I feel like Star Wars books in general are pretty good about like framing whatever story you're in a way where like you don't need to know everything. But like if you did, maybe you'd like be able to look at this story a little bit differently. And this is definitely like one of those cases. Because not like if you haven't played the game, the book is great, but you don't have any other context. If you come into it having played it or you play the game like after you've read it, then you can think about some of these characters and the things that
Yeah.
happen a little bit differently. And I really like that. That's why I
Tom,
like that Star Wars is like so many different forms of media because they all kind of like feed into each other in a really fun kind of way. So,
yeah. Tom at Random House Worlds, he when we were talking about how to kind of bridge that divide with it, because some prequel tie or some tie-ins that act as prequels, not prequel tie-ins, which is a different thing in our world. Um, but some of those like just take a standalone like adventure or something and just place the characters earlier, whereas this is like very thematically tied into who these characters are when you encounter them in the game. So Tom's suggestion of thinking was to kind of be like, there are people who like their introduction to Star Wars was they saw the Phantom Menace as a kid. And then they went on to watch the prequels, and they went on to watch the original trilogy. And then there's people like me who like I grew up with the original trilogy and then went back and watched the prequels to get context for the original trilogy. So both experiences are totally valid. It's just they're different. Like they're
yeah.
completely different experiences. And I am, with that sort of mindset, like I'm really kind of jealous of the people who read the book first and then get to play the game and get to see what happens in the game. Because it's like I was explaining to someone. So for any listeners, if you've read the book and you have not played the game takes about 20 hours to like if you're just mainlining like the story mostly, like it takes about 20 hours to beat, but there's a ton of stuff to do in there. But so ND5 comes in at about like the 4 or 5 hour mark or so. It's like once you get a ship and once you kind of start exploring the other planets, that's where ND and Jalen come in. And so ND becomes your companion from that point on. And so if you want to spend more time with our favorite droid with a heart of gold and a really cool coat, then you get plenty of time with him. Though, like he stays on the ship for most of the game, but he's constantly talking to you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
we love
his
it.
story weaves directly into the main plot from about the halfway point on.
Yeah. It's I had a feeling I was gonna like this droid um before the game came out because like Star Wars has just been like one-upping itself constantly with our droids. Um
Yeah,
like just over and over and over and again. And I'm like, I'm gonna like this one. And that's the case with every every single one. And I'm like, yep, yep, yep. It's the case with this one too. Yeah. I do like I highly recommend the game and like it may like the gameplay itself, even if it's not for everyone, because like there were points where I was like, it's not necessarily like game that I would like gravitate toward just like in my own things, but like it is worth it, I think, for the
yeah.
story, for really just because it's fun. And I
It's
think
so immersive that I
yes.
think that's the main thing that I had seen after. So I got to play it. I started playing it about a month before release.
Uh,
Because I had to work on it.
yeah.
And so that was like my first takeaway was that this game lets you live in Star Wars in a way that other games do not. Because other games like the Cal Kestis games are very plot driven and they keep
Mhm.
pushing you forward, whereas this is like once you get to Tatooine, it is a different experience. Like
Yeah.
you're riding your speeder over a dune and like, oh my God, there's some banthas. Like there's a sand crawler, like there's a homestead, and like here's a town. It's so you are living in Star Wars, and that's really cool. I spent so many hours just hanging out on Tatooine.
Yeah. I remember playing, I think it was the original Battlefront game, long, long, long time ago. And I remember thinking, I don't remember which planet I was on, but I remember thinking I would love a game where I could just kind of explore the galaxy.
Yeah,
Because like in Battlefront, you have like boundaries, you can't go past that. And I was
yeah,
always kind of like, I wish I could keep going. And this
yeah,
game really like finally like gave me a taste of like what that could be like. And
yeah,
I really appreciated that.
yeah. It's the most like there's a main story and there's a ton of side quests, but like it's the most like if you want to just sit around Star Wars and join a sabacc game, you can. And
Yeah.
there's a real that's really lovely in that way.
Yeah. And it's also a very beautiful game. Like if
Yes.
you just like stop sometimes and just like look around, like it's very nice to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I use photo mode a lot on Tatooine. Like, I have so many photos saved of like Tatooine landscapes and silhouettes and things like that.
It's amazing because you can get out of the game whatever you really want to in the moment. And like
Mhm.
if you want to just take a bunch of photos, like you have the freedom to do that. And I love that
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah. It's very much as like tourist as much virtual tourism as you can get with Star Wars.
Yes. Love it. When okay, so before you started playing the game,
Mhm.
um, what were you most excited about? Because like we'd known about the game for a minute and we knew it was coming out and we knew enough about it, but like there's only so much you can know going in.
Yeah.
What were you most like looking forward to about it?
I think I mean I saw the trailers. So my approach to trailers and like gameplay footage or like in like with film and TV, like behind the scenes type stuff, I actually try to avoid it.
Hmm.
I try to go into stuff as cold as possible now. And part of it, it's become much easier after I became a parent because I'm just like busier.
Yeah.
Um, but it's part of it is like, we get so few surprises in life anymore. And so like I just like we I remember when it came on the cover of Game Informer,
Hmm.
and like I read through the article to get a sense of like, okay, so you're a smuggler, you're going to have side quests to play sabacc, you're going to be moving around planets, and then the trailer kind of confirmed that, and then kind of set the time period for it, and it made me think of Shadows of the Empire, um,
Hmm.
and then I just kind of like backed off about it, and like I try not to like I read a lot of game industry stuff out of my own interest, but like I don't read too many like previews of games because like I want to, surprise myself with them.
Hmm.
So when my agent called, this is May 2024, the game released in like late August 2024. Um, my agent called and he said that Star Wars wanted me back. And I just automatically assumed when he said that it was going to be some sort of Clone Wars or Anakin thing, just because I've written Anakin a few times now. Um, and then he said like, oh, it's tied into the upcoming Outlaws game. And then like it took me a second to be like remember like what I had known about that game. And then we talked about when we got on the call with Gabby and Tom about it. Um, they said that one of the things that they wanted to do with this is have a droid be like at least half of the perspective. Um, and so they wanted someone who they knew could work with voice. And I had worked with Gabby on the Marvel side with Moon Knight and
Hmm.
Venom. And for listeners who don't know Moon Knight and Venom, Moon Knight has dissociative identity disorder. So he's got three personalities inside his brain that are fully fleshed out with unique voices. And then Venom is an alien symbiote. So Venom doesn't need, but generally works with a host. And so you at one and also Moon Knight has this Egyptian god that talks to him in his head. So you've got a lot of voices there, and it was really important to make them distinct. And Gabby said, what you did with Venom, who has his own unique like second person POV chapters. She said like, Venom's like Venom is Venom, but from a reader perspective, like also feels kind of alien and detached. and different from the human voices in there. So she said that like we want to do that, but with a droid. So that's kind of how it came together, and like and then I went back and watched trailers after that. I'm like, okay, I remember where this is going. And then we talked with the Ubisoft team, um, and they spoiled the whole story for me on that call. So,
No,
but they had
no.
to. Actually, no, it
Yeah.
was Tom. Tom is the one who, on our first call, he told me the entire story of the game in like 30 minutes.
Tom.
Yeah. And then we got on the Ubisoft call, and then like they went into greater detail about the characters and everything. So I had zero surprises playing the game, which is like the antithesis of how I approach things.
That's hard because like you're like I have to do the work. I have to know,
Yeah.
but also it's hard sometimes to like when if and when you're fortunate enough to like work on things that are also in line with things that you like to do personally. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
hard when they collide and you're like, "Oh, I don't want to know all the things, but I
Yeah.
kind of have to."
Yeah. So, so it was an interesting experience. It was different for me when I was playing the game, and even like the opening cutscenes. Like I knew the context of the characters that were talking now in a way that like game that players would not. And I'm like, oh, I know why you said that. Like I know what that really means. Like, these are things that people would experience when they played the game the second time around. So that was interesting. It was different.
Yeah. Mm. Let's talk about Jalen. Um,
Yes.
Amazing character. Wasn't sure how I felt about him at first. Because when I started the game a long time, it was probably when was it right when it came out? Maybe. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this character.
Yeah.
But although he's like a very complex, layered character, he's also very relatable.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about your writing process for creating these characters that despite like anything about them that may not always feel unrelatable, everyone still wants to root for them. And so like how
Yeah.
do you approach kind of making that possible?
It's so we know who he is kind of from his first scene in the game. I don't think it's a spoiler because it's in the trailers
Mhm.
where like, he's clearly giving Kay Vess a job, but just from the way that he talks, you know that there's something else there that he's not quite letting on. And so, we've kind of seen that archetype before in a lot of media, whether it could be a modern crime drama or it could be Star Wars, or where there's always like the ulterior motive and you're not quite sure if you can trust this person. Um, and so the point of the book was to show how you can like how does someone kind of become that? Because there I don't think it would be a good narrative if he was just always a huge dick, you know. So to show that like through kind of compounding trauma from his very first days of being born, and to like when terrible things happen to his family and everything he knows is like very bloodily taken away from him.
Mhm.
It forges who people are. Um, and so it was an interesting, like the dual narrative of Jalen and ND. Jalen has like they both have everything taken away from them in different ways. Like ND was programmed to be in the fighting in the Clone Wars, and so without that directive and purpose, he has nothing now, and he doesn't know how to operate.
Mhm.
And then you have Jalen, who like his whole childhood and young adulthood he's been told by these terrible parents that like we are rich, we are powerful, we are above law and society, and you're going to be our heir. And so the opening scene of this book, first chapter, so I don't think it's a spoiler, um, takes place when Jalen and his younger brother, his half brother Sliro, are very young children. I believe, memory serves me correctly. I believe like they're 8 and 7. Um, And Sliro is the bastard child, like the Jon Snow type character or Harry Potter, where, they're just very treated poorly by the parents. They tell him that he is half a Barsha. He is not a full Barsha, and everything he gets is half, like physically, like his room is half the size of Jalen's and stuff like this. And then it was really important to use that little snippet of their childhood to show that, like, even at a young age, he knows that's wrong, and he doesn't understand why you would treat his brother like that. He just sees him as his brother. So to set that sort of like emotional stakes for him, but then also build in the framework of like, this kid has no chance. He might be like thinking the right thing about his brother, but he is constantly getting these messages that he has to fight off, and the cognitive dissonance of for a child growing up. So we capture them at these different snapshots in their young adulthood, where you can tell Jalen is trying his best. He's really trying to connect with his brother, but he's limited by the lack of tools that his family has given him. And for Sliro, it was important that for the reader to like really understand the resentment there, because like when you encounter him in Outlaws, he's like um, he's much more powerful, and he's much more direct and purposeful. Um, and so it was important to show that like he wasn't always like that, but when he got the opportunity, of course he's going to take it. Like I think anyone who does not get therapy, and has lived through a childhood like that, like I mean, it explains so much about so many people in various levels of power, whether it be political or corporate power. Like, how do they push there with like this sort of like single-minded, um apathetic purpose where they just stomp on people to get there? And it's like, because they were not hugged enough as a child. And I mean, seriously, that's what it is.
Yeah. Like that opening scene, I felt so bad. And like that's like it drew me into the story so fast, because I was like, like I kind of know, like I don't know, but I know where things are going. And but like also when you make it kids, you feel bad because it's not
Yeah,
fair.
yeah. That was really important. We so the original synopsis, I had actually pitched it to take place like just open right on the eve of like the press conference where Jalen's supposed to like
Mm,
take control of the corporation. And then we were talking about it, and Gabby said, like, a lot happens really quickly, because I usually try to write books like 95 to 100,000 words. And she's like, well, what if we give you a little bit more space? Do you want to back it up and like give us some more time with this family first?
mm,
And so I pitched that prologue because I thought, like, well, the easiest way to humanize these brothers is to see them as kids in this really cruel and unfair system, and both of them struggling to do their best. Um, and then that kind of extrapolates outward into like the plotting of the whole book, where as Jalen and ND build their like back and forth, like push and pull relationship, the goal is for Jalen to like always quite be on the cusp of redemption, but he's got to become the character in Outlaws. And
mm,
so he's got to like two steps forward and then one step back, and then two steps forward and then one step back. And then like at like near the end, like just a collapse to become the character. But so by building all those two steps forward, one step back moments, the decisions that he makes, you start to understand why.
mm,
And hopefully it's painted in a way where you would wonder, like, if I was in this position, maybe I would have done the same thing,
mm,
because like there's a moment, or there's several chapters in like the back half of the book where he's got like this really valuable thing, and he acknowledges that he could just keep it on the secure place on the ship, but he takes it with him everywhere he goes,
mm,
because he's learned that if he does not keep things on him, like he will like it will just be violently taken away from him, just through life experience. And so to sort of paint that picture and get that sort of intimate knowledge of what a person has been through, hopefully by the end you're like, oh no, dude, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Okay, I get it, but you shouldn't have done that.
And that is exactly how I felt,
Yeah.
for the record.
That is why
Um,
there's an epilogue to make you feel better afterward.
does it make you feel better though? It made me sad. I mean, like, I
I
don't
you
know.
know, without spoilers, um, I found, what through all of my books, Star Wars and otherwise, like this sort of running theme that I tend to do is to make things about found family. And it's
Mm.
not intentional. I think it just says a lot about, how I grew up. Um, and my relationships where like it to me it's like probably like the most important thing in my life, and I just kind of present that message without even thinking about it over and over. And so I just wanted a little snippet to show that, like, in the end, around the time of Outlaws, like Indy does find his family, and it's
Mm.
just to be like, okay, don't. I know you feel terrible right before this, but just know that it's gonna be okay.
Mm. And it does have that effect.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. And it's a can't talk about the actual ending, but it's a good way to end it because you're on this journey in this book and in this game with these characters, and like to know that like, oh, they do actually land somewhere where anything could happen, they could go anywhere, but like they have each other. And
yeah,
in a way that's kind of like such a foundational part of Star Wars is like no matter where you go, if you have someone, no matter who they are,
yeah.
maybe you'll be okay.
And really, Star Wars is like, if you look at all the groups of characters that come together, like it really is always about like finding your family, and sort of like, thematically like kind of breaking the cycles that you're trapped in.
Yeah. And it's an important thing to tell stories about and think about. And something else that like really, really stood out to me in this story is kind of what you do with memory, especially when you're using it to kind of form the relationship between ND5 and Jalen. Because I'm trying so hard not to spoil things. ND5 has things that he literally cannot remember.
Yeah,
And Jalen's kind of sitting here going like, well, I wished there were things that I couldn't remember.
right. Yeah.
And I wanted to hear more from you about why you think it's so important to tell stories about characters who are really, really wrestling with things that have happened to them in the past and like trying to figure out how to move forward.
And this is also one of those things where it has become a sort of unconscious theme in a lot of my work. Um, I think it's like, the simplest thing is that, like, all of us as people, like we are built by our past, good or bad. One of the things that like, um, that when I talk with like friends or like with my wife about, you know, our recent therapy sessions or anything like that, we're trying to work out stuff that, like, has happened in our childhoods or whatever. There's always the question of like, you know, well, I'm working through this now, and because it happened, I am here now, in like this circumstance where, like, I'm, with the people that I love, and, have found a way through. And that would have necessarily happened if I didn't have those struggles early on and had the ability to try to process it. Um, so it's a fascinating thing to me, like just in terms of the directions that people take, and it's often just based on their willingness to confront their past in a healthy way versus their willingness to either totally avoid or confront their past in an unhealthy way. And that really is like the three paths. And what I'm hoping that for like the generation of kids where therapy and talking about feelings is much more acceptable, like maybe they won't have to go through that, and they'll just have like greater sense of, boundaries and what is healthy and things like that. But from a storytelling perspective, um, with ND, it's interesting because we talked about with Lucasfilm about like what makes a droid. And it kind of came down to like their original programming, their to fulfill purpose, and then how long they go without a memory wipe. Because if you get that memory wipe, it just kind of resets everything back to zero. And so that becomes a big theme in this game, that like it even becomes a threat to ND5, where it's like he does not want to lose all these experiences that he's accumulated. He understands that like it builds value and makes him who he is. And then on the opposite of that, you have Jalen, who's like kind of drinking his memories away because he can't escape them. He's getting like these PTSD moments of what happened to his family. And there's sort of that, like, they're both trapped by it because there are no therapists in Star Wars. I mean, unlike Star Trek, where you have Counselor Troy, there are no therapists in Star Wars. And so they can't, it's the thing that constantly pulls them back. And it's a very common thing that happens in real life and in fiction. And I think it's like, for me, like one of the most fascinating things to play with, because um I want all of us to be better, and I'm always fascinated by the times that people choose not to be, and what creates that. Which is also why I love Anakin Skywalker and find Anakin Skywalker so fascinating.
I was just thinking about, how much of Star Wars would not have happened if young Anakin had just gone to therapy. Like,
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, is like, there's like if the Jedi just had like, the therapist inside the Jedi temple, the Jedi counselors, like they could have just saved people so many problems.
like give the kid space to process his mom and
Yeah.
everything else.
This surrogate dad who took them away and then like got stabbed, 2 weeks later or whatever it was.
It's it's so wild to think about that. Yeah. It's if you think of a Star Wars character, like they probably could have used some therapy.
Yeah.
Uh
The real duel of the fates is whether or not they hired a therapist inside the Jedi temple.
if there's ever a Star Wars what if, that's the
Yeah.
one. That's the one.
Yeah. It's like Robin Williams from Good Will Hunting, like with a Jedi robe on.
I need someone to draw that.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh, that's
telling
good.
Anakin it's not your fault.
So good. I did love that about this book though, how like, you now have seen what both of them have been through, and
Yeah.
like them trying to process or not process all of it. And like you do come to understand like, oh, this is why you are the way that you are. I
Yeah.
love this book so much.
Appreciate that. Because I have to say, like when it was coming out, I realized that like it's a very fine needle to thread. Being a tie-in to a video game, which already kind of, segments your audience off. But also like it had to be a standalone crime story, and it was built around, the big reveal at the end of the game, but also had to work for people who didn't play the game. So my strategy as a writer was to not assume that the people were played or didn't play the game, and instead just be so close to the individual characters that you're feeling and thinking what they're feeling and thinking, and that way it doesn't matter whether you know the meta context or not.
Yeah.
But I was worried that I'm like, is this going to work for people? Because you never know until it comes out. And then when people
Yeah.
started, you were one of the first people too, like where you had posted something about it, I'm like, oh, thank God it works.
It works because I think um we've had enough like we've had enough prequels just in general. Star Wars, but also otherwise, where like prequels are hard because a lot of times you are telling a story that has a very defined ending, and a lot of people who might be consuming that prequel know how this character story ends or what happens. So, like, the key to making it work is taking them on that journey, but making that journey like almost much more interesting than the destination, which, like, yes,
Yeah.
how like the fact that Anakin becomes Vader is interesting. But what the Star Wars prequels do, for example, is like show you like, oh, this is exactly how he got there.
Yeah.
And it's a wild adventure, and it comes with a lot of things that if you're seeing it for the first time, you don't necessarily expect this thing and that thing to happen.
Yeah.
And this book is really good at that in that it takes these characters and really dives into like not just who they are as people, but like why they care about the things that they care about. And again,
Yeah.
still not an easy thing to do, but it's done in a way where like if you've not finished the game or if you've not started the game or you don't care about video games because they keep saying like even if you don't play video games you should still read this book anyway. Um it's still a standalone thing that can be very strong on its own, but
Yeah.
also at the same time because this is so hard paired with the other thing that exists that is tying into it makes it even stronger without making someone feel like, oh, I'm really missing out on this thing that I have not consumed,
Yeah.
which Star Wars has gotten really good at, but it's still a really hard thing to do
Yeah. It's
successfully.
like you can watch Andor without having seen Rogue One, and
Mhm.
that's that's kind of like the same thing.
Yeah.
The other thing was to make it like to really drive a lot of world building in like the underworld and the ISB at this time period. So this takes place just a few months before Solo. And there's not a lot of material there.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
the other thing was being able to like just treat it like if you don't know where these characters wind up as just like an anti-hero crime story. And that really builds out like layers of what's the ISB doing at this time? Like what are the Huts doing? What's Crimson Dawn doing? And how is everyone kind of like angling around each other? So it was built to work on multiple levels. From what readers have told me, it does work on
Mhm.
multiple levels. Actually, one of the most interesting things that I found, because so the book is structured in three parts. Um, and that was intentional, kind of like how like a video game will have like three different missions
Mhm.
to it. And so the mechanics of each part, or like what drives like the risk and the stakes, is different in each part. But I have found that like sifting through some of the reviews, like it's pretty evenly split about which part people like the best. And I think that's like, oh, that means it worked,
Yeah.
because it's like everyone's going to bring their own personal preference to things. So if they like, the action heist sequence the best, that's different from someone who like, oh, I want to see what the syndicates are up to, and like how do they deal with that, and like the politics of the ISB and the syndicates versus like the let's see how horrible like the rich and famous are in in Star Wars. Like everyone wanted, like everyone's bringing a little bit different perspective, and for it to be like evenly distributed as to what people find is their favorite part of it, like that was a big relief too. It was like, okay, it does a few different things, and like people seem to like it pretty equally.
It is very good. It is very good. Um, Once again, I wish I could spoil this, but I won't because it's too good. But you got to bring some pretty cool characters,
Yes.
side characters into this story. Um, one I knew about because you told me, and then
Mhm.
there was one I was like, you did not do that. You did. It was really good. Which is why I'm keeping the surprise a surprise because like it's good. But um, how does that feel to kind of like be able to, in a different way, aside from the fact that this book is a literal tie-in to another Star Wars thing, um,
Yeah.
your book is also like tied into the larger Star Wars universe because some of these characters appear in other places. How does that feel?
That's always the fun part.
Yeah.
And I think it's like this is, we're all contributing to like the action figures in this big sandbox.
Yes.
And so the first thing, once the very basic like plot arc is kind of hammered out, that's when that's when the author gets to start asking for the support characters they get to
Mm.
bring in. And shout out to my Brotherhood editor, Alex Davis, because when we were doing that one and we were mapping out Brotherhood, and he said, like, I feel like we actually need an actual villain, like not just the systemic villain, but like a person villain. And I was like, okay, well, like, maybe I could try to make one up. And he goes like, you want to use Ventress? And I'm like, yes, I want to use Ventress. And then he goes like, yeah, you just got to ask. And I'm like, I can do that? And he's like, yeah, the worst they can say is no. And so with this, I kind of carried that sort of mentality with when I started asking, like, this is my list of people that I would like to be in there, and I want to, these are the roles that they're going to fill, and this is like where like their ages during this time period and what they would be doing. And I think it works pretty naturally. And that's the one thing is like, they never want you to put someone in there just for the purposes of a cameo. It has to
Mm.
make sense naturally for these people to have encountered each other. And because this is an underworld book, um, there's a line I put in there where the galaxy is big, but the underworld is small. And I think
Mm.
that's really true, because these people, like, they're competing for the same jobs, they're avoiding the same imperial security, they're like fighting against each other, but then also working with each other. So like I don't think it's like small universe syndrome to assume that a lot of people in the underworld have encountered each other at one point or another. It makes sense. It's just kind of like, we live in a big real world, but I know a lot of people in the publishing industry because like we work together and we keep
Yeah.
up on things. So it's like their industry though is running spice and delivering weapons and things like that. So yeah, it's the fun part. And I got to they okayed almost everyone that I asked for. And so I was really surprised too. Some of them took more layers of approval
Mm.
than others. And my non-spoiler hint for them that is like one person has been more prominent in the most current, past few years of Star Wars media than others. And so that required a little bit more layers of approval to get in.
Mhm.
And I hope to meet that particular person, actor at a con someday so they can sign my book. That would be awesome.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. You're gonna make that happen somehow.
Celebration 2027.
Yes. Yes. Let's do that. You and I, we got a mission.
Yes.
Um, um, no, I felt like because I had that same thought as I often do. I'm like, I love seeing this character again in Star Wars, but like, does it make sense? And like every time this character or that character was named or showed up, it made total sense. Like it felt so natural as if we've never seen them in another Star Wars before. So it worked perfectly and it worked. And you actually got to do it. So like you win
Yeah.
on multiple fronts.
Yeah. That's sort of like I had backup plans too, where it was like, you know, like there's kind of like a sketch for like what that character's role would be. Um, and with like a very brief, bullet point of like they got to do this, they're helping out here, they say this, and they do blank. And so you have to kind of design it to move laterally if you need to, because there's the production time for this is so short. Like you can't really just go back and throw more spaghetti at the wall. Um, so it was designed to kind of be like that. But once I got the okay, then it was like, okay, I know what to do because I know their voice and I know like their attitude and things like that. And then I really got to lean into it and have some fun with how I present them.
There were parts of it I was reading and I was just thinking like he had so much fun writing this. It's like you
Yes,
can
I
just
did.
tell, and it's like that's some of the stuff that I love the most about these books is like I sometimes if I talk to an author enough and I'm reading something new that they're reading, I'm like I can picture them smiling as they were writing
Yeah,
this.
it is. So one of like I wind up pitching this a lot to my agent. My agent knows that like I'm always inserting this into pitches. I love espionage stuff. I always have. Like modern spy stuff is so focused on like stunt work and
Mm.
action, but like just real tense heist and espionage stuff. Like I keep going back to like the original Mission Impossible TV
Mm.
series, which I just loved as a kid. Um, and I still love like it's available on streaming and it's like it's so good with tension because everything is just like these clockwork heist pieces in a 45-minute TV episode. And so for like the middle section of this, which is basically like a heist, I mapped it out like an episode of Mission Impossible, where Jalen is the mission coordinator who's looking at like who can fill various roles. And then once they get the roles, like how are they going to pull this off? And then of course things go wrong because that's where the drama happens, and
Mm.
everyone has to kind of pivot. And so plotting that out was like, I think it's probably the closest to an actual heist that I've been pitching heists for years, but this is the first time I've actually been able to do one. And then in the last part of the book, um, it's still espionage, but it's of a different sort where there's like it's a stakeout and tracking and sort of like the non-violent part of espionage where like it's a lot of like sleight of hand dialogue and like infiltration and things like that, and that's also stuff that I love both in movies and in video games in particular too, being able to do that sort of sneaky stuff. So this is just me like playing with all of my toys that I wanted to.
And it works especially well when the author is having fun,
Yes.
especially in Star Wars. And like you are having the time of your life, and I feel and like that makes the reader feel that way too, and it just enhances the experience so much. So anyone out there responsible for making sure you got to do what you got to do in this book,
Yeah.
good job.
When, when I pitched, again, I don't think this is much of a spoiler, but I sent my editors of like, picture ND5 dealing with the DMV. And then like they bought off on it. And from what I have seen, it's a highlight for many readers there.
That was also really good. I kind of forgot about that until you just said that. I'm like, that is another highlight for me. It's really good.
That it was for we were talking about like memory and character for ND5. Um, One of the reasons I wanted to do that, outside of just like the humor that you could get in there, and also the like functional purpose of like this is a public archive that would have information, so it would be a good place to try to recover stuff. Um, I wanted to put this character who already feels out of his element. I wanted to put him in kind of like the most extreme version of that, and so it would either be like childcare or the DMV, and I didn't want to do childcare, you know. But the DMV, where it's like there's bureaucracy and waiting, and oftentimes it doesn't make sense. And this is a droid who is used to like things following protocol, making sense. There's a like a direction for instructions, and that gets to reveal a lot of his character while also doing it in a pretty funny way.
Mm. Oh, it's so good. There are so many reasons that I highly recommend this book, but like that is one of them. It's just like ND5 just like doing the most seemingly like normal thing. But it's not. But it's also in space.
Yeah.
So
Actually, when I pitched that scene, there's a planet on there that like this is the Skeleton Crew trailer had come out, but the series had not yet. So we didn't know what the purpose of the suburban planet looked like. We just had seen a scene from it in the trailer, and so I wanted to do something that was like suburban urban, um with like houses and um separately like someplace where like people worked and
Mm.
lived. And so I wanted to pick a few locations like that because I feel like in Star Wars, like, we're so much like we're either doing something like with the Jedi, or we're doing something with the Empire, or we're doing something with the Rebels. Like there's always like some blend of that, or like we're doing like the scum and villainy cantinas and Coruscant underworld type of stuff. But like 99% of the galaxy is not that. And
Yeah,
so I wanted to like tap into that same sort of vibe as the suburban snippet that we saw in Skeleton Crew.
perfect. It works so well. Um, so a bit of a hypothetical question to end, because I
Mhm.
have to keep coming up with new ones every time someone comes back twice. Um, so hypothetically, you live in Star Wars and you're low
Mhm.
on funds. So you need to find a job, you need to do something. Who are you going to agree to work for?
So, I mean, this is actually if you play Outlaws, like this is actually a big part of it because you can increase your reputation with one of the syndicates, and it often means that like someone else doesn't like you. So it's a trade-off because of like where you go and how easy some missions become because of it. Um, I mean, like, the Pike Syndicate's kind of like the worst, so I would probably avoid them. Um, God, they're all actually really bad in a way.
A
Um,
little bit.
yeah, I would like maybe I would pick Crimson Dawn just because I have a crush on Amelia Clark. I mean,
Excellent answer.
who doesn't, right?
Yeah.
She's great. She's
Yeah.
adorable.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I was also gonna say Crimson Dawn, but I don't know why. I just feel like of all of them, maybe like I don't know, I feel like not that I trust anyone, but like also like if they like me, maybe I'll be okay. Which may
Yeah,
not be the case.
I wound up in the game. I actually aligned with Crimson Dawn the most, and I think part of it is like, so the game has the Ashiga clan, which is was created for the game, and like they're criminals, but they've also got like this weird cultural way of operating that like doesn't quite make sense, and they're kind of insulated that way. And then you have the Huts, who are, I mean, they're the Huts. We know how bad the Huts are. And then Crimson Dawn, I feel like is interesting where like if you're on their good side, they could be good business partners. And like if you're on their bad side, they are like vicious. But
Yeah.
um there's a level of just like chaos that I think the Huts um and Black Sun like have more of than Crimson Dawn. So I would feel like my job security is like, as long as I do a good job, my job's a little bit safer working for Crimson Dawn.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it's like of the worst, maybe it's the least terrible.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I know who I would pick to work with on a mission though. Like there's definitely more people like that way that I would trust. Like
Mm.
I would not trust Lando. As much as I love Lando, I would
No.
not want to be on a mission with him.
No. No.
I would want to have a drink with him after, but I would not bring any money with me so he couldn't steal it.
I yes. Um Living in the Star Wars universe just feels to me like so like something I would not want to do, but then I think about like the real world and I'm like,
Yeah.
would it really be worse?
It was like there's a lesser known Star Trek series called Star Trek Prodigy. It
Hmm.
was an animated series that had two seasons. It was kind of like a sequel to Voyager, but like it starts off. I remember like I don't remember if this was like the official pitch or it was something a reviewer said, but it was like four teenagers wake up in Star Wars and realize that they'd rather live in Star Trek. And that's basically what it is. It's like these kids like are kind of like prisoners on like this mining colony, and it's like in this really like horrible authoritarian regime, and they discover a crashed Starfleet ship that has a hologram of Catherine Janeway to guide them, and they're like, we can pick a better life this way. And I'm like, yeah, I love Star Wars, but like I would like to like visit them in a fun touristy way, but like I don't think anyone would actually want to live there, except for like, it would be cool to live on Naboo. That's basically
It
it.
would. It
Yeah.
would. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Genuinely, like I've been looking forward to this for months, and like talking to you is always great, but like getting to dive deeper into a really good book that you got to write, and like kind of like talk more about like why you made some of the choices that you did and things like that related to the game and also outside of it. This has really been really fun, and I'm so glad that we
Oh,
got to
thank
do
you
it.
for having me back. I'm always happy to come back on and talk, and hopefully there'll be another book. Which that's not a tease. I don't know anything. I'm just throwing that out there. I would like to write more books in Star Wars. And honestly, like they don't tell you until like about a month before you actually have to start writing, and about 6 months before the due date. So, if they have something with me in mind, like I wouldn't know, and then a month later I would know. Like that's how it works with them.
Amazing. The hope is always that you get to do more, but like even if it's a while before that happens, we'll find a reason. You'll come back. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Read Low Red Moon. And also for the record, read the acknowledgments, because like reading the acknowledgments all the way through is not something that I've always done with every book, but I've been doing it more with every Star Wars book that's been coming out, and like highly recommend. Highly recommend, because it's a window into um where the author's head's at when they're working on the book, having written the book. And it's great.
If you want to know why some things are named the way they are, read the
Yes.
acknowledgments.
Yes. It's very fun to like you almost feel like you're like learning secrets you're not supposed to know. And that's very that's very fun. Everyone who reads the acknowledgments can know, but um so do that and read the book. And you don't have to play Outlaws if you don't want to, but also do it because it's worth it and it's fun.
I will say, like, if you've read the book and you want to know if you want to like have more time with ND5, there are several cuts on YouTube. There's like a 3 hour movie cut of Outlaws.
Oh,
And then there's one that's like 30 minutes long that is just basically ND's journey. Like if you search like K and ND5 cutscenes, you'll find like a 30-minute one that is just like the scenes basically with the two of them. So it cuts out like how K got there in the first place, like the first 5 hours of the game. But if you want just like ND5, like that will do it. But if like there's like both a 2 hour and a 3 hour edit of the cutscenes in the game. So like if you want to just treat it as like a movie night, and watch that, that totally works too.
I love the internet. I love that these things
Yeah.
exist.
Someone else also put on YouTube like every single piece of ND5's dialogue in the game, including like, "Kay, there's a message on the ship. Kay, they've got a new message. Kay, a message has arrived." And it's just like so like half of it is that, and the other half is like actually meaningful dialogue in the game. But there are a lot of people who just want to hear his voice because he's a sexy droid.
Yes. If you are into that, go find that. I'm going to. I'm curious. That's all.
I should also shamelessly plug for people who've played the game and they're about to pick up the book. If you listen to audiobooks, the audiobook is narrated by Jay Rencon and Eric Johnson, who played ND5 and Jalen Vrax, respectively. So they are in character, like performing their characters again. And it's got all of the usual bells and whistles of Star Wars. And one of the great things is that ND5's dialogue, like spoken dialogue, like is modulated like it is in the game. So like
Amazing.
I someone told me that they felt like it was like DLC for the game,
Oh,
and it really does feel that way. And the actors were they were so great about it, and I talked with both of them, and they both said like it just felt like, okay, this is, I'm just back to this role, and you don't always get that opportunity to go back to a role that you've really connected with. So it's really great all around.
Oh, I gotta listen. I haven't yet.
The first thing that I did when I got my preview copy, I listened to the epilogue at the end because I just wanted to hear that.
Oh, that epilogue. Might have to bring you back for just like just spoil everything. We'll see.
We could have a spoiler conversation. I'd be happy to do that.
We should at some point. Because there's so many good things. Yeah, that's all for now. Because like that's I think everyone should read the book. This is a good like, I would say intro. It's long for an intro, but like if you are on the fence about this book, hopefully like this conversation has pushed you in the right direction.
I think it's just if you want an underworld book, if you want an ISB book, if you want a book that ties into the video game, one of those three, if that interests you, like basically if you want to get away from the Jedi for a book, because the galaxy is big and they're not everything, then this book will work for you.
Now This Is Lit is part of the Faraway Fandom Network. It is produced by Devor Montum and written, hosted, and edited by me. Jose Jimenez designed our podcast art. You can keep up with the show on Substack and Now This Is Lit, and find the show wherever you get your podcasts. There are so many ways you can support the show, and all of those ways are linked in the show description. The newest way is to become a member of our Patreon. For $1 a month, you can get access to an exclusive show and a sticker. And if we get 500 people to support the Patreon per month, I can hire an editor. That would be great for me, and maybe for you too. So if you'd like to support the show with just $1 a month, you can do it that way. Or you can just keep listening and sharing the episodes. That is also helpful, and I appreciate it. For more book reviews and Star Wars Book Celebration, follow Star Wars Book Reviews on Instagram and TikTok.